You had two ambassadors that made several requests, and here's basically what happened to their requests. They were torn up.
Well, that's just not true, Congressman.
Oh, Madam Secretary, they didn't get through. It didn't help them. Were those responded to? Is that your testimony today?
Okay, and who else was at your home? Were you alone?
I was alone, yes.
The whole night?
Well, yes, the whole night.
I don't know why that's funny. I mean, did you have any in-person briefings? I don't find it funny at all.
I'm sorry, a little note of levity at 7:15.
Well, I mean, the reason I say it's not funny is because it went well into the night when our folks on the ground were still in danger. So I don't think it's funny to ask you if you were alone the whole night.
Congresswoman, you asked if I had a SCIF. I had secure phones. I had other equipment that kept me in touch with the State Department at all times. I did not sleep all night. I was very much focused on what we were doing.
You have laid it out. I think you have said this has not been done perfectly. You wish you could do it another way. And then the statement that you made a few minutes ago when you said, you know, I have given more thought to this than all of you combined.
Now this, a federal judge wants the State Department to find Hillary Clinton's emails on Benghazi. He's ordering new searches. Judge Napolitano is with us. What do you make of this?
The actual searches that are being ordered here are searches of State Department servers for the emails of 3 of her closest aides, the State Department and the Justice Department. The Trump State Department and the Trump Justice Department sent the same lawyers into this judge to make the same arguments that had been made for 4 years during the Obama years, that we've already searched and we're not going to search anymore. There's been no substantial change whatsoever in the Rex Tillerson State Department or the Jeff Sessions Justice Department about Mrs. Clinton's emails. And an Obama appointee to the federal bench said, I'm not buying this argument. You're going to look for those emails. This is the world turned upside down.
No, I thought the judge had ordered. Go search. Go find them.
The Obama-appointed judge rejected the argument of the Trump State Department and said, you will look for these emails. It is the Trump State Department that said, we don't want to look for Hillary's emails. So my argument is, why are they making the same argument that they blasted during the campaign?
Well, I don't know the answer to your question, but you tell me this. Is this a step forward? If the State Department, the Trump State Department, has now been ordered, find the emails, surely that's a step forward.
It is an area of emails that has never been looked for before. It is the emails that Mrs. Clinton sent to her personal aides and that they sent to her that did not show up on the ones she decided to surrender to the State Department. So in order to find them, they're going for State Department servers, which have captured 100% of these aides' emails use on that server.
Quickly, 20 seconds. Will we see the light of day?
I hope
these
so.
Emails?
I hope so.
I know you hope so.
You can see how angry I am that the Sessions Justice Department and the Tillerson State Department is trying to protect Mrs. Clinton.
I thank the ranking member. Colonel, I want to thank you for your service and sacrifice to our great country. This afternoon, your former boss, Mr. Morrison, is going to be sitting right where you're sitting, and he's going to testify. And I want to give you a chance. I think we're bringing you a copy. I want to give you a chance to respond to some of the things Mr. Morrison said in his deposition, page 82 of the transcript from Mr. Morrison. Mr. Morrison said this: I had concerns about Lieutenant Colonel Vindman's judgment. Among the discussions I had with Dr. Hill in the transition was our team, its strength, its weaknesses, and Fiona and others had raised concerns about Alex's judgment. When Mr. Morris was asked by Mr. Castor, did anyone ever bring concerns to you that they believe Colonel Vindman may have leaked something, Mr. Morrison replied, yes. So your boss had concerns about your judgment. Your former boss, Dr. Hill, had concerns about your judgment. Your colleagues had concerns about your judgment. And your colleagues felt that there were times when you leaked information. Any idea why they have those impressions, Colonel Vindman?
Yes, Representative Jordan. I guess I'll start by reading Dr. Hill's own words, as she attested to in my last evaluation that was dated middle of July, right before she left. Alex is a top 1% military officer and the best Army officer I've worked with in my 15 years of government service. He is brilliant, unflappable, and exercises excellent judgment.
So
He was exemplary during numerous visits, so forth and so on, but I think you get the idea. Mr. Morrison, yeah, the data that was, let's see, I'm sorry, July 13th. So, Mr. Jordan, I would say that I can't say what why Mr. Morrison questioned my judgment. We had only recently started working together. He wasn't there very long, and we were just trying to figure out our relationship. Maybe it was a different cultures, military culture versus.
And Colonel, you never leaked information?
I never did, never would. That is preposterous that I would do that.
Okay, Colonel, it's interesting. We deposed a lot of people in the bunker in the basement of the Capitol over the last several weeks, but of all those depositions, only 3 of the individuals we deposed were actually on the now somewhat famous July 25th phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky. There was you, the individual sitting beside you, Ms. Williams, and then there, of course, was your boss, Mr. Morrison, who I just read from his deposition. When we asked Ms. Williams who she spoke to after the call about the call, she was willing to answer our questions, and chairmanship allowed her to answer our questions. When we asked Mr. Morrison who he spoke to after the call about the call, he was willing to answer our question, and Mr. Chairman Schiff allowed him to answer our question. But when we asked you, you first told us 3 individuals at the NSC, your brother and the 2 lawyers. And then you said there was a group of other people you communicated with, but you would only give us 1 individual in that group, Secretary Kent. And the chairman would only allow you to give us that name. When we asked you who else you communicated with, you would not tell us. So I want to know first, how many other people are in that group of people you communicated with outside the 4 individuals I just named?
Yes, Mr. Jordan, on call readout, certainly after the first call, there were probably a half a dozen or more people that I read out. Those are people with the proper clearance and the need to know. In this case, because of the sensitivity of the call and Mr. Eisenberg told me not to speak to anybody else, I only read out, outside of the NSC, 2 individuals.
2 individuals.
Das Kent and 1 other person.
And you're not willing to tell us who that other individual is?
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. The gentleman suspend. Counsel.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask you to enforce the rule with regard to the disclosure with regard to the intelligence officer.
Thank you, counsel. You know, as I indicated before, this committee will not be used to out the whistleblower. That same
Mr. Chairman,
necessity
can you first stop the time so I don't lose the time?
Will persist. You are recognized again, Mr. Jordan.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see how this is outing the whistleblower. The witness has testified in his deposition that he doesn't know who the whistleblower is. You have said, even though no one believes you, you have said you don't know who the whistleblower is. So how is this outing the whistleblower to find out who this individual is?
Mr. Jordan, this is your time for questioning. You can use it any way you like, but your question should be addressed to the witness. And your question should not be addressed to trying to out the whistleblower.
Well, okay. Colonel Vindman, there's another thing Mr. Morrison told us in his deposition. He said he was not concerned about the call itself. He said there was nothing illegal or improper on the call, but he was concerned about the call leaking, the contents of the call leaking. He said this, he was concerned how it would play out in Washington's polarized environment, how the contents would be used in Washington's political process. Mr. Morrison was right.
Excuse me, Mr. Jordan, could I get a page?
Page 44. Mr. Morrison was right. The call leaks. The whistleblower goes to Chairman Schiff, staff. Then he runs off to the lawyer, the same lawyer who said in January of 2017 the coup has started against President Trump. The one thing the Democrats they didn't count on was the president releasing the call transcript and letting us all see what he said. They didn't count on that. Transcript shows no linkage. The 2 individuals on the call have both said no pressure, no pushing, no linkage, but security assistance dollars to an investigation. Ms. Williams, after the call on the 25th, we know that Colonel Vindman talked to several people. After the call on the 25th, how many people did you talk to about the call?
I did not speak to anybody about the call.
Didn't speak to anybody?
No.
I yield back.
Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter the Lieutenant Colonel's performance review into the record.
May I inquire of Colonel Vindman whether you would like us to do that? If you would, we're happy to. If you would prefer it not be in the record, I leave that to you.
Yeah, I guess with redactions, it has PII in it, and that should be protected. And maybe the only elements that are relevant are the actual narrative. Chairman.
Did you read the relevant portions, or?
I mean, that was the short version. There were some other paragraphs in there, but.
Chairman, I'll withdraw my request.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both for your testimony. Ms. Williams, you joined the Foreign Service in 2006, correct?
Correct.
Prior to becoming a nonpartisan career official, you worked as a...
Okay, Mr. Jordan, let me come to you. You're a lawyer too, right?
Nope.
Okay, I thought you'd gone to law school.
I went to law school, never took the bar exam.
Oh, gotcha, okay. Gotcha. My dad never took the bar either, so. Do you oppose the use of criminal contempt charges against people who refuse to testify before Congress?
No, we've used it. I mean, we contempt Lois Lerner after a year of hearings and investigation.
You sure did, didn't you? You said the U.S. attorney had a legal duty to go to the grand jury, didn't you?
Well, it says shall. When the Congress voted for contempt, it says shall go to the grand jury. That U.S. attorney did it.
That's right. And you also said the U.S. attorney unilaterally decided to ignore the will of the House of Representatives.
It's true.
You said Mr. Manchin was legally bound to convene a grand jury, but indeed he ignored his obligation and unilaterally decided to ignore the will of the House of Representatives. Don't you think it's important that when we're exercising our Article I powers to get the evidence we need in order to legislate, that people obey the subpoenas of the United States House of Representatives? You used to believe that, Mr. Jordan. Do you no longer believe that?
Once a legitimate investigation, sure.
All right.
Sure.
In 2012, the Oversight Committee approved a resolution holding Attorney General Holder in contempt of Congress. Do you remember that one?
Say it again. I was thinking I was going to elaborate on the answer when you cut me off to ask me the question again.
Well, continue, Mr. Jordan, because everybody's always violating your rights. So I'm going to give you all the time you want.
No one's violating my rights.
Okay. Well, look, let me remind you what you said when Attorney General Holder was held in criminal contempt of Congress. We simply want the facts, because Attorney General Eric Holder will not provide what the law requires. We are left with no other option except to hold him in contempt. We're doing the exact same thing, Mr. Jordan, with all the bluster about the border and all the other nonsense you're talking about, Russia and everything. We are holding him in contempt for violating a subpoena of the United States House of Representatives.
There wasn't some special select committee that Republicans were not permitted to serve on that issued those subpoenas. That's not the case.
All right, well, let's close with this.
Oversight
Mr. Jordan, why did you vote against
the
the commission of 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats equals subpoena power? Why did you oppose that? Are you also not interested in what happened to us on January 6th?
Of course, everyone is interested in holding people accountable who did wrong. The FBI is doing that. The Justice Department is doing that appropriately. So what I'm not interested in.
So why did you have all those Benghazi investigations if you don't
motivated
think Congress should be investigating?
Because Hillary Clinton misled the American people.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back to you. I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
If you want to...